Red shift here, doing my part to shift perceptions out of the pink and into the red. If the people get so poor that they can't even afford to have kids, then that will lead to revolution. But until that happens, you can always have more kids by being more virtuous, more cohesive, more frugal. At the end of an empire like now, it's a situation where people are living decadently, and this means they're wasting more money than they should be. And also, they're not cohesive and they're not moral, and so since they're not grouped together in tightly knit communities which are very similar, like Christian communities or Muslim communities or Buddhist communities, since they're not grouped together like that, they're not able to save money. And they're not able to keep the cops out and all that kind of stuff. So as long as everybody else is living in such an immoral, foolish, decadent, wasteful way, virtuous people can always outbreed these bad people. And virtuous people should outbreed them. And virtuous people can do so by being cohesive and forming communities composed only of virtuous, like-minded people and being very, very frugal and helping each other and living densely packed on a small plot of land and then having a ton of kids and then having those kids make money in outside jobs outside the commune, and then donate a lot of the money to the community, and then the community buys more land, and then more people can be born, and then the commune thereby amasses wealth, and then buys more land, and then breeds more, and then amasses more wealth, then buys more land, and then breeds more, and then amasses even more wealth, and then buys yet more land, etc., etc. If everybody were already doing this to survive, then you could not use this solution to outbreed bad people. But if people were already doing this to survive, then people would already be collectivizing according to race, religion, values, various goals, etc. You know, like one commune working toward the goal of reestablishing libertarianism, like what we had when America was started, another commune working toward establishing anarcho-capitalism, you know, etc. It's because there's still a little bit of buffer left for people to be decadent. It's because of that you can still outbreed these callous, foolish, decadent people. And you can outbreed them by having a community like Pastor Dowell's, which saves in sound money, has weapons, marries people within the community, and only marries men to virgin XXers, helps each other out, has a high level of morality, etc. Then you can breed like crazy because your cost of living is so low, and you're all helping each other because you're all part of a community, and you all have identical or similar values, and you all have a high level of morality, so that you all help each other, and that gives you all much greater power and prosperity, so you can afford to have way more kids. Having way more kids makes your community even stronger and improves the world if you're moral, wise people, because then you're increasing the percentage of sane, moral people in the world and decreasing the percentage of insane, selfish, nihilistic, cowardly, apathetic sheeple. This is because the community's virtuous people are breeding faster than the bad sheeple, and so the sheeple are getting outbred, and are thus slowly disappearing through what you might call loss of market share. Right? Because even if the sheeple are breeding at above replacement levels, if the good, virtuous people who are living in communes are still breeding at higher levels than the sheeple are, like let's say the sheeple out in the world are, you know, out in America at large, outside the commune, are having 3 kids each. But the people in communes who are highly virtuous are each having like 5 kids each. Well, then you are still outbreeding them because you're becoming a greater percentage of the population. You're outbreeding them. You know, you're gaining market share, you might call it, right? And then another good thing is that the commune is an island of sanity, which people outside the commune can copy once shit goes bad in the evil outside world. You know, the world outside the commune. And you're also making it so that you can defend your area when shit goes bad or when the government wants to pick on you. Right? Like, going into a ghetto is hard enough for cops. Some ghettos are almost no-go zones held by gangs. But even the gangs are interspersed with regular people in the ghetto. But in a commune, everyone in the commune is opposed to the cops. Not just a powerful, violent, but small percentage of the population in the ghetto, like the gang. Right? Like, it's not like, you know, certain sections of ghettos are entirely populated by gang members. No, they're just the most powerful people in that area, so they kind of control that area, or at least in a sense they control it, right? But they're not the entire population of that area. But in a commune or a no-go zone, everybody in the commune or no-go zone is opposed to the cops, you know? So it's even harder to, you know, take over a commune or a no-go zone than it is to, you know, go into a gang-controlled area of a ghetto. Right? So it's even easier to keep the cops out if you have a no-go zone or a commune and you have enough people, let's say a few thousand people, and everybody's heavily armed, and they would all rather die than let a single cop step 1 foot onto the commune's land, you know? When the commune owns a lot of land and has built fortifications to protect that land from incursion by the government and is willing to die to keep the government out, then the result is that the government is even less able to enter that commune than it is able to enter a gang-controlled ghetto that is almost a no-go zone. The government has little power over the gangs, but imagine how much less power the government has over a commune when the commune actually is a no-go zone and is virtuous, and 100% of the people within the commune are willing to die to protect the commune. You might, in fact, want to make a condition of marriage and living within the commune be that the XXers be willing to fight in any war against the government that may happen as a result of the government trying to take over the commune. XXers could not fight in the past because battle was hand-to-hand with swords. Now battle is done with guns. Well, actually cyber warfare and missiles and stuff, but that's not my point. Mainly warfare now is cyber warfare and economic warfare, and secondarily missiles and stuff like that. But actually, you know, like, in terms of, like, revolution, it'll still be done with guns. I mean, that's how the Afghanis are holding us off, you know, making massive trouble for us when we're in their country. Just simple guns, not even very good guns. AK-47s, they're not even that accurate. You know, M16s are way more accurate than AK-47s. Yeah, AK-47s can fire with, like, you know, sand in them and shit, and M16s can't, but so what? They're way less accurate, you know? So all you need is some basic guns, and you can keep the government out. So revolution still all does really just come down to guns, and not even that good of guns. As long as it's a rifle of some kind, preferably something with some accuracy, like an AR-15, then yeah, you can hold the cops off. Absolutely. But like I was saying, you know, now that battle is done with guns, it doesn't take any more physical strength than you know, is held by, like, an old person, pretty much, right? Like, so women have the strength to pull a trigger, and they have probably just as good of an eyesight as ours, and they're very patient and stuff. So I think women could be just as good at defending a commune, you know, with an AR-15 as guys could be, you know. So this means that the commune should perhaps only have XXers in it that are willing to risk their lives, you know, keeping the cops out, and you know, keeping out any cops or soldiers that try to take over the commune. Because XXers' lack of physical strength is no longer an excuse for why they can't fight. It was in the past when you had to be strong enough to swing an axe or a sword, but not anymore. All you got to do is have the strength to, you know, what would you call it? You know, your hands can't shake and stuff. As long as you can hold, you know, an AR-15 steady, you know, and you can pull a trigger and you have decent eyesight, you can defend the commune. So that's most women. Most women could do that. So there's really no reason why the women in a commune can't do that. Plus, if you have, well, I think I talk about that later on, but maybe I'll mention it now in case that's another video. If you let only women in who are willing to physically risk their lives defending the commune with an AR-15, just like the men, and put their lives just as big of a danger defending the commune like that, if you only let women who are willing to defend the commune with their lives like that into the commune, you'll only be getting good women, brave women into the commune. And if you're only getting brave women into the commune, then all the men breeding will be breeding with brave women, and then all the sons in the next generation will be just as brave, if not braver, than their fathers, because they had both a father and a mother who was very brave, you know? And then that'll be like, you know, courage eugenics, making each generation more courageous than the last. And then that would be a really, really good thing, right? And you could do that even without having to breed with Middle Easterners, you know? You can't have a commune filled with XXers who just want a free ride. I mean, that's a matter of opinion. I could be wrong, but I think it's probably a bad thing to let XXers just come in because they want a free ride. Because, you know, they'll betray the commune and lie about it and slander it afterward if the commune is taken over by the government. And then the commune will look bad, and then nobody will want to do the commune thing again, and men will get a bad reputation, and the women will lie and say the men sexually abused them and all that stuff, you know? If they're loyal and invested enough to risk their lives for the commune by hiding behind a wall surrounding the commune's border and you know, using an AR-15 to pick off cops or soldiers from that wall, then those XXers deserve the good life of living in the commune and getting taken care of and living in a virtuous community. And if they're not loyal like that, then perhaps they don't deserve that good life. Perhaps XXers only deserve the high standard of living found in a commune if they're willing to risk their lives for the commune. I mean, you know, women in Israel, Jewish women, they have to serve in the military. Everybody in Israel has to serve in the military. I can't remember for how long. I think it's 2 years. Maybe it's longer. Maybe it's 4 years. But, yeah, they have to serve in the military. Everybody, men and women. And look at how Israel's just been growing and growing in terms of, like, taking the Palestinians as land. They've been growing in, you know, cyber power and everything. Like, Israel's just getting more and more and more powerful. Number one, that's because of their high IQs, but it's also because of their aggression and the fact that they force women to be brave. They force them to live in, force them to, you know, be in the military for a few years, etc., etc. right? So you don't have a bunch of, cowardly, SJW women who are like, oh, the government is to take care of us, but really they're not willing to risk their lives for the government at all. Like that's no good. Like at least the Jewish women in Israel are, willing to defend their government, like or whatever, defend their people. Like they're invested in their society, is what I'm saying, right? Like rather than just wanting to parasitically feed off of their society, like SJW XXers. Right, so this is really, really important to understand. I think we need to copy the models of all the societies that work. Copy the things in Islam that work, copy the things in Israel that work, copy the things in the Amish that work, etc., etc. This is, I think, a good technique to use. And also it means, just look at Israel's success. Israel's success is due to their high IQs, and so we need to, use the same technique, and we need to, do sperm bank sperm breeding, whether we actually use sperm from an actual sperm bank or just from a really high IQ, really great health, really great memory guy that we know, so that we don't risk getting a high IQ, great memory genes from a guy from a sperm bank who has bad health or subpar health. We could get, sperm from a guy who's really, really great health and a really high IQ and a really great memory, and then have half our kids with sperm from those kind of guys, and then our grandkids will be much smarter. And if our kids and grandkids do that, also it'll just take a few generations before our IQs will be in the 130s, 140s, and then then that commune will be like one of the most powerful places in the entire world, and it will be jumping forward in terms of economic wealth and cyber power and everything else, and acquiring land. It will just be radically jumping forward at incredible speed, and then nobody will be able to stop it. I mean, look at how fast Scientology's gained as much power as it's gained, and it's gained it so fast. It's incredibly fast how much, and look at how much power China's got over just a few decades. 20, 30 years, it's grown incredibly quickly in power, and economic power and geopolitical power and all the rest of it, so you could have that happen to a commune in just 40 years. The commune could be incredibly powerful. You just got to be willing to invest in loss. Have half your kids by other men's sperm so that you can have better grandkids, and also so that those higher IQ sperm bank sperm kids of yours can take care of you in your old age if you can't work because the IQ requirement for a middle class job having risen too high by that time, etc. So you really, I think it's a good thing to require XXers in the commune to be willing to risk their lives for the commune. Plus, having only the men fight means there's higher odds in the commune, higher odds of the commune losing any battle that might occur with the cops or the military. But having the XXers fighting would mean that the odds of the commune achieving victory in any battle with the government would be twice as high because there's twice as many people fighting. Plus, the government's victory, if achieved, would be at least twice as costly in terms of PR fallout due to the deaths of a lot of XXers. That would make the government look terrible and make the government less likely to want to attack the commune in the first place because they know that the commune has women who are willing to fight, and the government knows that that would look absolutely terrible, and it would make the government look terrible if a bunch of women died, right? And plus, everybody would see that, it's not just these women being under the thumb of these men who are, fighting the government, and, the women are just, cowed and all okay, we're just going to do whatever you say, men in the commune. No, if the women are fighting for the commune too, then there's no way that the government can claim that the women were just, controlled by the men and all this kind of stuff. No, then the government would have to, the government would look bad because everybody would see, the women are fighting for the commune must be in the right. If the government killed all these women in the commune to defeat this commune, and all the women are fighting and fighting it out with the cops as well, well then, everybody's going to realize that, the women and the men in that commune were in the right, and the government was in the wrong. And everybody's going to realize that, and then everybody's going to completely blame the government for the deaths of all those XXers. People don't like it when women die, and that is a good thing, and that is something that we can use to the advantage of the commune, It would probably be 3 to 5 times more costly in terms of PR if all the XX-ers were fighting and the government won against the commune and all the XX-ers died. Because society cares more about XX-ers than about men. So we got to use that to our advantage, right? And if the XXers are brave enough to fight, like I said, then your sons and daughters with those XXers will be far braver. And that's another massive advantage of only having very brave XXers in the commune. You will have a whole next generation of super brave men and XXers, and thus the commune's bravery will be sustainable, right? Like, what you need is a commune filled with freedom-oriented XXers, like, people like Lindsay Zwickiel, who are like, hardcore in favor of freedom, and courageous XXers who also have compassion, like Nassim Ogdam, and, high ratiocination ability XXers, even if they're ugly, for having high ratiocination ability sons and daughters who can do subversive coding. And, you also should probably have beautiful XXers in there to make the commune desirable to live in, and sympathetic if it gets burned to the ground and all the XXers die. Because people don't really care if a bunch of ugly XXers die, but they do care if a bunch of very beautiful XXers die. And if you don't believe me about that, look at the sentencing of the women who have had sex with underage guys and gotten prosecuted and sent to prison for that. Like the ones like, what's their name? Mary Kay Letourneau, not that good looking. She got sent to prison for quite a few years. I can't remember how many, 5, 10. She went to prison for years for that. But then, not that long after that, I can't remember how many years it was after that, 2 years, 5 years, whatever. It wasn't that long after that another teacher got caught doing the exact same thing, basically. And this teacher was way better looking. She was like an 8 or a 9 out of 10. She was quite attractive. And what happened? She got probation, if I remember correctly. So this is it's absolutely true that people care about beautiful XXers, but don't really care about ugly XXers, or even mediocre looking XXers. Not like Mary Kay Letourneau was hideous. She just wasn't all that great looking. She was like average, maybe slightly below average, I don't know. But she wasn't all that great looking, and that's enough. Society just really doesn't care about XXers all that much if they're anything other than beautiful. But if they're beautiful, then it's like, oh my god, it's a tragedy, it's a tragedy. You know what I mean? So like, if the commune also has really smart, but maybe not that great looking, not necessarily that good looking XXers in it, that's good for, breeding kids that have, high ratiocination ability. But if the commune also has beautiful XXers in it, then you'll also have very good looking kids as well. Maybe they won't be smart, but if you have the beautiful ones marry the smart ones, then, if they have a bunch of kids, some of the kids will be the worst of both worlds. They'll be ugly like their ugly parent and dumb like their dumb parent, but other kids will be the best of both worlds. They'll be beautiful like their beautiful parent and smart like their smart parent, And if you have beautiful XXers in the commune also, like a quarter of the XXers in the commune are beautiful, then if the government comes in and burns the commune to the ground like it did with Waco, and all those beautiful XXers die, and yet they have, Facebook pages and YouTube accounts, and everybody gets to see how beautiful they were, and then think about, oh my god, it's so sad, this beautiful woman is dead now, then everybody's going to be like really up in arms about the fact that the government burned the commune to the ground, considering it had so many beautiful XXers in it. You see? If you have those kinds of XXers in the commune, then the next generation of men and XXers in the commune will probably not only be brave, but will be intelligent and freedom-loving as well. And that's super important as well, because the importance of having the commune not devolve back into statism or forms that are similar to statism. And it's important in order to keep up with the rising ratiocination ability requirement to have a middle-class job, so that the commune cannot fall behind economically and can instead keep amassing wealth, although to accomplish that, breeding with sperm bank sperm is more important. That's one of the most important things you need to know. Like, that's probably one of the main points on this channel. Like, go back to spanking women, form a commune, and do sperm bank sperm breeding. Even if you don't use sperm from an actual sperm bank, use other men's sperm to have half your kids with, so that you can, and have other guys in the commune do that also, so you can marry your biological kids off to his sperm bank sperm kids, and he marries his biological kids off to your sperm bank sperm kids, so you can all have much, much better, grandkids, with much higher IQs, better looks, better health, better memory, better everything. Assuming the sperm donor had better everything, which you would only choose a guy for doing that if he did have better everything, That's one of the most important points of this channel, is to understand that you have to do eugenics, you have to do a breeding program. If you're not doing that, your genetic line is doomed. You could have 30 kids, and your genetic line will still be doomed, probably, if you don't do, eugenic breeding, because eugenic breeding is the only way to keep up with the rising IQ requirement for a middle-class job, so that you don't have to use genetic engineering and have your kids bred genetically engineered to be super submissive and obedient and low testosterone and gullible and all the rest of it. You know? It really is the case that eugenics and a breeding program are one of the most important things in the entire world. Not just in terms of like gaining power, but like, like survival, just mere survival. You have to do that. You have to. Because if you're not gaining, you're actually falling behind, Just kind of like with, money. Like, if you're not making as much money every year more, then you, like, inflation is like 5% a year is 5% per year right now. So if you're not making 5% more every year at your job than you were the year before, you're losing money. You're making less money. You're getting a demotion every year in terms of earning, So the same thing with IQ. If you're not getting your kids and your grandkids and your great-grandkids smarter and smarter and smarter with every generation, you're actually falling behind. You're not staying stagnant. You're falling behind. And that is really, really bad for your genetic line survival, for, you being able to have kids and grandkids that, make enough money to support you in your old age, etc. Just for mere survival, you have to do a genetic eugenic breeding program. You have to. It's the only way. And the only way to do it without being dysgenic is to use some other guy's sperm for half your kids. You have to do that. And if you live in a commune and keep costs low, you can have a ton of kids, and you could have just as many kids as you'd be able to have outside a commune if you didn't have any kids by another guy's sperm. You could have like 4 kids by your own sperm, and then 4 kids by another guy's sperm, and you're still way above, like replacement levels in terms of passing on your own genes. And if your own kids have 8 kids each, 4 of their own and 4 with another guy's sperm, then same thing. You're still increasing your line. Your genetic line is getting bigger and bigger, but yet it's getting smarter and smarter with every generation. If, other guys in the commune are doing that and you're all interbreeding. But you don't even have to do that, like I said in a previous video. You could have your grandkids, marry each other, because, if the half of them are from sperm bank sperm and half of them are not, then it's like, they're not even related at all. You know what I mean? Or if your grandkids are like all related and you're having them breed with each other, they've still been like, how did I say that? Like, you could make it so that they're not as related. You know what I mean? Like, some of them are related from the sperm bank sperm kids of like their parents and stuff. So like their grandparents, they only share like one grandparent between each other instead of sharing both grandparents. So they're only half cousins. And then that's way less than first cousins. So that's not even really inbreeding. And yet that would be eugenic. You know what I mean? You could do that. And so then you don't need other men to be doing the sperm bank sperm thing either. You don't need other men to also be doing it to switch your kids. Of course, it would take a little longer, but, that's the cost. But yeah, a breeding program is absolutely necessary just for mere survival, much less actually growing and thriving and forming a dynasty. I mean, fuck that. Like, even just survival requires doing a breeding program now. But back to the script. In the suburb, people don't really know each other. And even if they do, they don't necessarily agree with each other. Right? So how can you defend a suburb from the government taking over and declaring martial law in that city if half of the people in that suburb are hardcore liberals who love and trust government, and the other half of the people in the suburb are conservatives who want to keep the government out and make their suburb a no-go zone when the government collapses or when there's an economic crash or whatever. Right? The only way to be free is to gather together with like-minded people and keep non-like-minded people out. This applies to political views. ANCAPs need to live with other ANCAPs. It also applies to morality. Monogamists need to live with only other monogamists. Non-monogamists need to be forced to live with each other instead of living near and thus being able to prey on monogamous people, or rather the daughters of monogamous people. Honest people need to live with honest people, with other honest people. Courageous people need to live with other courageous people. Compassionate people need to live with other compassionate people. It applies to finances. People who believe in sound money need to live with each other and need to, keep away from people who don't believe in sound money. It applies to people who have the same goals. People who want to do sperm bank sperm breeding to give their descendants a chance of surviving as the ratiocination ability requirement for a middle-class job gets higher and higher. These people should live together too and not live together with people who don't want to do sperm bank sperm breeding. Muslims should live with other Muslims both for the sake of the functionality of the societies of other people and for the Muslims' own sake, so that they can live the way they want to live without having their freedom infringed upon by people of other political or religious beliefs. Christians should live with other Christians. Householder Buddhists should live with other householder Buddhists. But like I said before, the main point I wanted to make in this video is that as long as things are still decadent and wasteful like they are now, you can always outbreed the decadent people by being more frugal than them, by living in a commune, using cloth diapers, breastfeeding, living in very cheap structures, building your own housing structures, maybe living in a barracks, don't go to a bank and get a huge loan for a house. It's going to take you 30 years to repay. That's ridiculous. You could have had a bunch more kids with that price, with the cost that you would pay in interest in taking out a loan for a house. You know what I mean? Live super, super cheaply in a commune, and then you can have a ton of kids. And outbreeding means you're more like, not only are you outbreeding the bad people, which is a good thing for society, but you're also making it higher chances for yourself, as I've said before, higher chances that, one of your kids, like maybe your 5th or your 7th or your 10th kid, is going to be a best of both worlds kid. All the best qualities of your wife and all the best qualities of you, and neither the bad qualities of either of you. And then that kid is so great that he's going to have way more kids than any of his other siblings, and then really improve your whole genetic line. You see what I'm saying? So, outbreeding other people is a good thing in many ways. Plus, the more kids you have, the more people you have to take care of you in your old age, right? And that's good because, as the ratiocination ability requirement for a middle-class job gets higher and higher, this means that it's a situation where it's your kids maybe still will have a job, but maybe they're earning hardly anything. So if you have 10 kids and they're all able to contribute a little bit toward you to help you survive in your old age, that's better than having 2 kids and just the 2 kids each being able to contribute only a tiny bit to you surviving, which is not enough to live on. But if you have 10 or 20 kids, that same little bit that they're contributing, because there's more of them contributing that same amount of money, that means that in aggregate, that amount of money that you're receiving from all your kids will be enough to help you survive financially in your old age. You see? Especially since you're still being frugal like you were living earlier, which allowed you to have more kids in the first place. Living frugally makes it more likely that you can survive in your old age as well. So like I was saying, you can outbreed the decadent people by being more frugal than them, and by accruing prosperity and more power and prosperity than them as well, and both by being more frugal and by living with only people who have the same views and values as you yourself have. And being able to outbreed your enemies is a very important way of winning against your enemies, or at least amassing enough people on your side so that you can separate from your enemy instead of remaining so small that you continue to be oppressed by your enemy. Such as if ANCAPs breed like crazy. If ANCAPs all form communes and then breed like crazy, then the ANCAPs can eventually become populous enough to where they can walk away and form their own government and force a balkanization of the U.S., and then the U.S. will have to allow it. Imagine if there were 10 or 20 million ANCAPs all living in one city or state, and all in the same area of the state, right? They could separate and form their own country, and what could the government do? Nothing. Absolutely nothing, because there'd just be too many ANCAPs who are all willing to die to keep the cops and the government out. And then the government wouldn't be able to do a damn thing other than maybe annihilate them all and then, take over the area. But, I don't think they'd be allowed to get away with that, because everybody would see what a monstrosity government is if it wiped out 10 or 20 million people. You see what I mean? So, outbreed your enemies. Do it. It's an important, perhaps an essential way to win against the evil elites. And do so eugenically. That is very important. Eugenic breeding is super important. It's basically the most important thing there is. The power of beauty doesn't compare to the power of ratiocination ability and memory. The power of health doesn't compare to the power of ratiocination ability and memory. Even the power of money doesn't compare to the power of having a high ratiocination ability and a strong memory. Just look at apes. Silverback gorillas are super strong. They can easily kill a man. But human beings have higher ratiocination ability, and this has allowed the human race to take over the world and create weapons like the atom bomb that can destroy whole cities, and even simpler weapons like guns, which can, super easily kill stronger animals like silverback gorillas, rhinos, elephants, etc. Our higher ratiocination ability and better memories have allowed us to become infinitely more powerful than huge, powerful animals like silverback gorillas and rhinos and crocodiles. Having a high ratiocination ability and a great memory is about the greatest power and the greatest gift that there is. It allows you to enjoy life more, not only because you make more money, but just because you appreciate beauty more, you appreciate, the beauty of mathematics, you appreciate all kinds of intellectual, beautiful things. You can't appreciate the beauty of a mathematical equation if you don't understand the mathematical equation. You know what I'm saying? So it's it can also greatly increase your ability to appreciate beauty and appreciate life if you have a really strong ratiocination ability and a great memory, right? And not to mention, like I said, it gives you the ability to make more money. It gives you the ability to acquire more power in terms of technology and money, accruing. And then you can also, use it to make the world a better place, coding, freedom back into existence, right? Like, ratiocination ability and memory are the greatest power and gift that there is, They're more powerful and important than anything else, assuming that you live long enough to use them to make the world a better place. Right? Like, health is unimportant, as long as your health is not so bad that you die young. Now, obviously, it's way better to have great health than crappy health, but, if you have a really high IQ and a really great memory, that is way more important than having good health. It really is. If your health is not great, but you live to be 60 years old, that's enough to radically change the world for the better if you have a very high ratiocination ability and an incredible memory. There's no power in the world which compares to ratiocination ability and memory. Therefore, there is nothing more important than doing eugenic breeding, preferably with sperm bank sperm, so your kids are not genetically engineered to be obedient and submissive and gullible. But since genetic engineering is not even here yet, you cannot pay to have your kids genetically engineered to have high ratiocination ability and great memory yet. So the only option you have right now is to use sperm bank sperm, or, sperm from another guy, whether you get it from a sperm bank or not. That's your only option to raise your grandkids' ratiocination ability and memories. Because you don't know when genetic engineering is going to be here. It could be here in 20 years. It could be here in 60 years. I mean, like, it should have been here already. I mean, we'd probably have way, way, way more advanced technology right now already. We would have technology today that would be like the technology that we'll have in 200 years if we, didn't have any fiat currency or anything. You know what I mean? Like, fiat currency has held back the human race so much, it's ridiculous. So you don't really know when, genetic engineering of kids will arise to where you can genetically engineer your kids to have, 200 IQ instead of a 100 IQ. You don't know when that's coming. It could be in 60 years. And so your only option right now is to use, other guys' sperm for half your kids so that you can have your grandkids have much higher, ratiocination ability and better memories. That's the only way to do it right now. So, and considering how important it's becoming to have, a high ratiocination ability and a great memory, this really is an essential thing to do right now. At the present time, the only way to raise ratiocination ability and improve memory is doing a breeding program with sperm bank sperm. So I hope you can see the incredible importance of doing a breeding program with sperm bank sperm, or with other guys' sperm, no matter how you get it. And to do so is not only what is best for the world and for your commune or no-go zone, but it's also best for you individually, because your sperm bank sperm kids will be much smarter than your biological kids, because the sperm donor has 160 to 180 ratiocination ability, and so those kids will make a lot more money than your biological kids, and will thus not only be able to contribute more money to the commune, but will also be able to make a lot more money, but will also be able to make a lot of money and therefore take care of you in your old age, whereas your biological kids, even if they do still have a job, they might very well not be able to afford to take care of you in your old age because of your biological kids just scraping by and barely surviving financially because of their low ratiocination ability, barely being good enough to have any kind of job. Because of the, ratiocination ability requirement for a middle-class job having risen so much from the year 2020 to 2060, when a guy born in the year 2000 will be retiring or will be close to retiring. But even that assumes that that guy born in the year 2000 has a high enough ratiocination ability to even still have a job at that time. He might be unemployed in 2040 or 2030 because of the ratiocination ability requirement for a middle-class job having risen so much. And then the only way for him to survive will be for him to either live in a no-go zone and garden so that he has food to eat, or have sperm bank sperm sons who are smart enough to still be able to get a job themselves and therefore be therefore be prosperous enough to take care of him, their non-biological father. Some people might accuse me of hypocrisy because of advocating that people breed using the argument that breeding merely sustains this evil empire. Like, some people will say, it's stupid and hypocritical for me to say that you should breed, right? And they'll say that breeding just sustains the evil empire. Why breed? No, go MGTOW and don't breed. That'll help destroy the empire. But I want to point out that some people will say that breeding sustains the evil empire because it gives the evil empire more people to vampirically feed off of in order to sustain itself. But I advocate that the commune get big enough to stop paying taxes, to keep the cops out with AR-15s so that, there's no way for the government to enforce the non-pack, like the commune can get away with not paying taxes because the government can't force them to pay taxes because they can't even get into the commune to arrest anybody because everybody in the commune keeps the government out. right? Like, that's what I advocate for, so that the commune doesn't even have to pay taxes, right? Or, so either the commune gets big enough eventually so that it's strong enough to keep the cops out to not pay taxes, or just, refuse to pay taxes from the very beginning. Maybe, like, make money some other way, right? Or not have outside jobs at all, garden, and maybe make a little bit of money somehow under the table out in the outside world. Not even signing up with a social security number. You're just like getting paid to work under the table. Then even if you work for very little money, like half normal wages, like half of minimum wage, if you still get free food and you're doing a lot of gardening in the commune and stuff, then you have very low expenses, and if you're not paying any property taxes or anything, then you can use that money perhaps to you can use that money to make money online, like Zeitgeist Eater does, right? Like through investing and stuff, right? Or have the smart people in the commune, take control of everybody's money that they all pool in the commune from working under the table in the outside world, and then they could use that money, use an algorithm to, make money with that money, right? Either way, the difference, and then they could, refuse to not pay taxes from the very beginning. Or they could pay taxes for a few decades, and then until the commune is bred enough to where it's thousands or tens of thousands of people, or maybe even hundreds of thousands of people, and then it's big enough to where it can just say, fuck you, government, we're not going to pay taxes anymore. And then the government won't be able to do anything because it's too big. Either way, the difference between breeding being a sustainer of the evil system and breeding being a way of fighting the system is whether you are funding the evil system or not. That standard of whether you're funding the evil system or not is really one of the best, if not the best, way of measuring whether you're fighting the system or not. And by that standard, it can be seen that MGTOW is actually supporting the evil system that it claims to be fighting, because MGTOW men continue to pay taxes. The system doesn't care too much what you do as long as you keep paying taxes. If a commune breeds and keeps paying taxes, then if the commune is not doing subversive coding, then it's a situation where the commune is actually helping support the evil system. The evil system... Right, like if the commune is paying taxes and is not doing subversive coding, then the commune is actually helping support the evil system, especially by breeding a lot, right? Because then that's just going to be more taxpayers, making the government even stronger, even more sustainable, right? But if the commune is not paying taxes and is doing subversive coding, then it's not helping the government. It's actually harming the government, and then it's not feeding the system. The evil machine needs to be fought, and a commune does not necessarily help or harm the evil system. It depends what the commune does. If it pays taxes, it's helping the evil system. If it doesn't pay taxes, it's helping fight the evil system. But even just forming a commune and saving its sound money is a way of fighting the system. And lowering the cost of living and paying off the land so you don't have to pay rent is a way of refusing to help the system by refusing to let the system financially feed on you through, predatorially high rent. So if a commune saves a lot of money and does it in the form of sound money like silver or gold, and if the commune also does subversive coding, such as, coding on tails or Tor, or, creating a new Silk Road, an uncrackable Silk Road, well then the commune is then doing a lot to fight the government, especially if that commune is also refusing to pay taxes. If you're refusing to pay taxes and you're saving in sound money and you're doing subversive coding, then you're really fighting the system a lot. So the difference between breeding helping the evil system or harming the evil system is whether the commune pays taxes and whether the commune separates from the world around it and prevents its people from being corrupted by the outside world, especially its daughters, and whether the commune does subversive coding and whether the commune saves in sound money or not. Saving in sound money puts pressure on the U.S. government. Coding disempowers the government and empowers the people, like how Bitcoin does. Depriving the outside world of XXers to sleep with by keeping your daughters inside the commune and away from promiscuous men, and forbidding any of the men in the commune from being promiscuous and kicking them out if they are promiscuous, this makes promiscuity outside the commune less viable, as well as at the same time building an independent society that can survive, or can more easily survive, when the outside world collapses. And not paying taxes starves the evil vampiric government of the lifeblood of money. So a commune that breeds a lot can either be helping or harming the evil system. It depends on what the commune does. Another thing I want to say in this video is this. I think we need to copy the examples of things that work, which is what I said earlier. I think it might be a good idea to have a beat-in initiation ritual to induct people into the commune. Only brave people will do such a thing. Submit to such a thing. Submit to a beating, physical beating, being punched and kicked and stuff, just to get into the commune. And even if the person is not brave, he will be braver after getting beaten up in order to get inducted into the commune. From what I understand, gangs do beat-ins to induct people into a gang, so why shouldn't a commune do it? And maybe you could let the people know before they join the commune, before they do the beat-in initiation ritual, that there's no getting out of the commune, so that the commune is like a gang in that respect, too. If they try to leave the commune, then you kill them. It works for gangs, and if the commune is therefore just as violent and brave as a gang, but does not allow its members to use drugs or alcohol, or does not allow infidelity, does not allow other bad behavior, then it would be like a good gang, or at least a much more powerful, functional gang than like the Bloods or the Crips or something. The Freemasons kill Freemasons who reveal the group's secrets to the outside world. Gangs kill gang members who defect. The Mafia does the same thing, right? Perhaps it might be a good idea if the commune adopted this practice. It works for those other groups, why wouldn't it work for the commune? Right? Especially since the commune would not have the corruption and moral weakness and vices that are possessed by gangs and the Mafia. Maybe there could be other tests in order to test the courage of the men and XXers who want to join the commune, and only if they pass the tests are they allowed to join the commune. It would be better to test white or Asian people for courage rather than just letting in Middle Eastern or African American people just due to their high courage genes, right? It's better to pick brave people among high IQ people than it is to pick people, that is, people with high ratiocination ability. It's better to pick brave people among races with high ratiocination ability rather than pick high ratiocination ability people among brave races. You see, because, there's always the reversion to the racial mean when it comes to ratiocination ability. But now that I think about it, a commune could grow without having to mix with the new people joining it. The commune could buy a lot of extra land and then separate that land from the original land, and then let the new members of the commune live on the new land and not let them ever enter onto the original land, so as to make it so that there's no risk to the computers of the original commune members. So that any government agents who have joined are kept out of the original commune and have to live among the rest of the new members of the commune who live on their own plot of land that is adjacent to the original commune's land. So it's like a brand new commune, but it functions the same way, and it's right next to the original commune. So you still get the advantage of cohesiveness in terms of keeping the cops out of the same area because, they're right next to each other. The two plots of land of the two communes, right? And the new commune adjacent to the original commune could pay the original commune members back for having bought that land for them. And then maybe pay them back a little bit of interest as well, like an extra 10%. So you don't even need to do it benevolently, like you're just giving them the land and they're not paying you back. You can make them pay you back. And considering they won't have to pay rent, they'll easily be able to pay you back very quickly. Right? And then the commune could grow like that. Each commune isolated from all the others, but each of them all being right next to the other communes, and all of them having the same philosophy, or at least a similar philosophy. A bunch of communes all right next to each other and having similar beliefs would probably be very powerful. The separation means they're all immune from subversion from outsiders. And yet the proximity means the communes partake of a level of safety that they would not have if each of the communes were in a different state. One commune in Texas, another in Montana, another in Maine, another in California, etc. With all the communes next to each other, they would have a level of safety and invulnerability to the government that would be almost the same as if it was one huge commune, but yet they would all be able to keep separate from each other, and thus the original commune could keep itself from getting FBI agents put into it. Although probably the other communes right next to it would get agents put into them. But because of the those agents would probably get to power positions within those other communes, or those other communes to follow the original commune's example and have no power positions, in which case they would not be able to get into a power position and then subvert the other communes. But, even if they did, the original commune would be much more free and not subverted, and would thus be much more prosperous, and then would be able to buy up the land from the other communes that are next to it. And just drive out all the members of that second commune into other land, So then it wouldn't even matter that, the other communes are getting subverted, because the original commune could keep growing. It could keep growing by breeding, and while also partaking of much greater protection because of much greater numbers due to all the other communes right next to it on all sides. Now, you may think that the original commune would therefore be very limited in how much it could breed because of all the land around the commune being occupied by other communes, but the original commune could buy more land from those surrounding communes. And then those communes, if they were also too numerous at that time, could buy land from the communes next to them. And then those communes could buy more land from around them from around them from the citizens out in the world who own that land from those outlying communes or next to. Or the original commune could buy a large plot of land from, people next to the civilians next to the outlying communes, and then the original commune could give that to one of the communes next to it, and then that commune could move and occupy the new land on the periphery of all the communes, and then the original commune could occupy that commune's old land, thus expanding the original commune with land right next to it, right? Like, let's say there's a first commune, right? And then next to it is the second commune. And then there gets to be a third and a fourth and a fifth and a sixth, and it's all just in this big block, it's growing like a big square on the land, like viewed from a bird's eye, or in a circle, right? Well, like it's either circle or square shape, the land owned by all these communes that are all next to each other, right? Well, like you could have the original commune buy out the second commune's land, and then the second commune, to ever be formed right next to the original one, that one could move way out to the periphery of the square or circle of all the communes. And it could buy land outside out there, but from civilians, and expand the commune. So, you wouldn't have to move all the communes out one. You just move the one that's very near to the original commune that wants to expand. You move that to the very outside, the new land that's bought, and then you have the original commune occupy the land of the first commune and the second commune. So then the second commune still has land and room to grow, and the original commune has bought and now is like doubled its land or whatever, because it bought the land of the second commune, Yeah, I hope that makes sense. I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. I hope I'm explaining it well enough so that you can understand. Let's see, I said, or the original commune could buy a large plot of land from civilians next to the outlying communes, and then the original commune could give that to one of the communes next to it, and then that commune could move and occupy the new land on the periphery of all the communes, and the original commune could occupy that commune's old land, thus expanding the original commune with land right next to it. And the communes doing the most eugenic breeding, and or being the most frugal, would be amassing the most money, and therefore those communes would be able to grow the fastest. And so it'd be kind of like anarcho-capitalism, with the group of communes, within the group of communes, the commune that is the best at money accumulation because of, frugality or superior recruitment and retention of new members, or because of doing the most sperm bank sperm breeding, therefore having the highest IQ people who can therefore make the most money in the outside world. Like those communes, not the meta commune that's a conglomeration of all these communes that are next to it, but like all the little communes that are all next to each other. That would be like its own little version of capitalism, because each of those little separate communes that are all next to each other, the ones that are the best will be able to grow the most, both in terms of breeding and having the money to buy extra land. And then those communes will be able to buy more land and will thus be able to grow faster and encourage the other communes right next to them to change what they're doing and copy the richer commune's example so that they can get richer quicker too. You see, this has been Redshift. Hopefully someone got something out of this video. Peace.